we wanted to always keep it open so that we integrate with the other players and provide the best to the developers. And with that, our idea was we have the engine, we process them, but the developer teams need debugger, tracers, many more other things to be able to build a very thoroughly tested application.
All right, welcome back. Today we have a couple of guests, Emmanuel and Depesh from Buildbear Labs. And we have Everett and Rahul joining us again. Thanks for taking the time to do this, guys. Depesh, I'll give you a chance to start. Why don't you introduce yourself, talk a little bit about how you got into Web3 and what you're into.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much again for organizing this talk. I'm the co-founder and from a designation point of view, a CEO of Buildbear Labs. The funny thing is within the Buildbear Labs, we don't have any designations. We just kind of put it when we have to talk outside of Buildbear. I'm based in Singapore, and I have been into the blockchain space since early 2017. Actually, pretty much at the end of 2016 is when I started reading up. My background is I'm a self-taught developer. I was into international tax. All before this, I've done international tax law practice for 11 years. And the decentralized technology bug got into me. So I spent around 6 months in 2016 trying to read up on Bitcoin and everything else. And in 2017, decided that I should become a smart contract developer. So I quit everything with a simple thought, let me go into a library and start learning how to code. And from one milestone to the other, it just became a good career. I built a smart contract development career. And then from there on, I happened to meet Emmanuel in one of those places, and we started building this tool.
That's awesome. 11 years in tax. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, 11 years.
And were you in Singapore at the time?
5 years in India and 5 years in 5.5 years in Singapore.
Okay, so I'm just curious, how was the tax situation in Singapore?
Well, Singapore is a tax heaven, honestly. That's the reason why, from an Asia point of view, it's a brilliant place to sort of incorporate a company and then do business with every other countries in Asia. It's one of the most tax-friendly countries, and other regulatory-wise also.
That's awesome. It's a really cool story. Emmanuel, what about you? How did you get into crypto?
Actually, it was, to be honest, guys, it was a hackathon, right? So one fine day, I'm just going to a hackathon and I'm like, let's see what this whole fuss is about. Went there, started writing smart contracts, built a betting platform. We won the hackathon, if I remember correctly, and yeah, it was pretty nice experience, right? And that was like the start of the DeFi summer with all of that stuff coming up. And yeah, it really excited me. So before that, I was into systems. I was into building scalable and optimized solutions. Like that's my aim goal. To everything should be optimized. Use less energy as possible. Why run JavaScript? But like, hey, I mean, I started blockchain, like Solidity and all of that. Started working on some open source projects. Started consulting for some projects, and I realized that it's really not that great. Developing in Solidity, testing in Solidity, or deploying smart contracts, it's not fun, right? And you can't develop fast, you can't break fast, and repair fast, whatever it is, right? So I realized that you gotta bring the standards in Web 2 or whatever the other languages have, whatever people are already doing in systems, and bring it to Web 3, right?
And what was the name of the hackathon that you won?
Oh, so I think it was some game hackathon or something like that, if I remember. Oasis or something, game Oasis or something. It was by Matic, pre-Polygon, right? Yeah, so yeah, and yeah, they were just giving off Matic tokens during that time. I remember that. It was like for free first, and the thing is that mainnets didn't work that time. Mainnet, in the sense, Polygon mainnet wasn't working. The testnet wasn't working. We're just deploying on some random local chain and testing it out.
And we're here to make it easier, right? I know, Rahul, you probably relate to the mission of making the developer experience better, right?
Yeah, that's my main concern, specifically about Ethereum because I said this before, but Ethereum is very unique because it has a unique programming language and a unique virtual machine architecture, and that means none of the existing tooling that we have from 100 years of software development work on Ethereum or on Solidity. So we have to develop all these tools from scratch. So we basically start from zero, and we have to bring all this developer experience and now to Ethereum from zero. And I think at the same time, this is a great opportunity, but it's also a great challenge because we cannot expect that any company from outside this industry steps in and just develops all this developer tooling for us.
So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the thing now. Buildbear Labs, what is it? What problem is it solving?
Well, Buildbear Labs actually wants to redefine just how Web3 applications are built, tested, and deployed. And honestly, I think Rahul just kind of put essentially the right starting point that unfortunately, the way how EVM and this entire ecosystem has been designed, that the tools are not exactly of the same standards that you basically find when you come from Web 2. And that actually puts up a bit of a difficult situation for developers. And that is something that we faced as developers, as writing smart contracts and then building front ends and back ends and analytical services on top of these smart contracts. Everything had to be basically makeshift. And you're almost doubting every second thing whether this will work or not. And the only other way to figure out whether this will be is eventually deploying on a testnet, yet keeping your fingers crossed that maybe on the mainnet this will work exactly the same. And thus, around 3 years back, me and Emmanuel, when our only goal was to create a very simple environment for our previous employer, that can we just deploy our contracts and test them without wasting 8 hours a day in deployment and figuring out the tokens and figuring out the mock situations and all that thing. And what led to was, okay, everything needs to be looked properly. And we knew it from day one. This is not going to be a goal that we can get it overnight, not in a couple of months. We just thought that it's going to be a long journey. If you're going to be honest to ourselves, we're going to be the developers that we were from day one, and just we're going to see what needs a redefinition so that if we were building it back now, how would we want the world to look like? That's what the entire goal is.
Cool. So was there specific, you mentioned that you, at your former employer, you wanted to test the contract and like that's kind of what spurred this whole thing. So was that the specific moment where you're like, oh my God, this sucks, I can do this better? And that's the path that you went on after that?
So there was a small, so we started with a way thing that can we put honestly an engine onto the cloud, realizing that that's not the thing. But we spent around, I think 2 to 3 months only on the weekends trying to make it work. But the very first time where we did the successful sort of stable cloud engine situation, that was pretty much the first moment we realized actually everything else around is also broken, which means now we have a stable engine, but 1 second, we need everything else now that needs to talk to the engine, because engine is just processing the transactions. We need debuggers, tracers, explorers, faucet, and we realize, okay, if we sit down, we figure out a lot of things needs, kind of retightening the bolts, and then we realize, okay, this is going to go really, really long.
Yeah.
Nice. So we're going to get into a demo. We're going to take a look at how all of this works. We'll talk a little bit more about Simbolik as well. But before we do, I have one more fun question for you guys. So we met at Devcon. I actually have a clip of us kind of discussing the partnership, which I'll plug here. But also the other cool thing was when we went to your presentation, Vitalik just casually strolled in and listened in. And I'm just curious if you knew he was coming or...
Yeah, we did not know that he was coming. The only funny part was that, the the product, which is Brewit, which was actually doing the demo, they had reached out to us, I think, in July or August last year, preparing for this entire demo that they were going to do in Devcon. And they had a lot of issues, which we kind of worked on. We helped it fix. It was demo ready. And right before the talk, I was telling him, some strategies on how we should do a good demo. And I think, why don't you tweet it out? Because we're getting some, normies into the room to do the demo. Maybe Vitalik might look into it. He might just retweet. And while we were still discussing, Vitalik just walks in. So it was a what just happened kind of thing. Like, God, did he just hear us out? We might have a fantastic thing. And obviously the room was full. It was, whatever the size of the room was, it was decently packed, everyone because of Vitalik. And then that demo happened, and that was really nice thing. Mostly for Brewit, we're still asking them they're still in the project launch phase, so that's why they haven't put it out. But we're trying to work with them to, polish up the entire product so that they can launch it without any hiccups. They want to launch with the sandbox mode that will be completely using our engine. So all fingers crossed over there.
Okay. And what's the name of the other project? I think I missed it.
Brewit.
Brewit. And what do they do exactly?
So they've built this DeFi application. Basically, it's completely on top of the account abstraction rails. So you just go to the application, you sign in using your Google or your passkey, and then you do a lot of things, DeFi actions. But you can also do programmatic buy-in at particular dips, or buy every 100-minute my ether, or check my positions on Aave and do some squaring off, that kind of stuff. So they're making it more non-blockchain friendly kind of front end to the DeFi applications, let's put it this way.
That's interesting. And Everett, I see you like checking it out, I think, of it there, because you're always managing our Aave positions.
That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm always looking for easier ways to manage my position. You said like manages your Aave positions. Like, all right, I'm in. I'm sold.
It's true. It's a pain, right? I've been on like the beach before when everything is crashing. I'm like, oh no, am I going to get liquidated?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I look up Brewit though, and I get personal barista for your crypto journey. Is that the one?
Yes, correct. That's the one. So what you see, which is live, I don't think is the big product that they're working on. But yes, that one already has the account abstraction in it. And I'm not sure though if they've launched on testnet or how people use that one till now.
Yeah, I can definitely resonate with the everything is harder than it should be, because I've been trying to manage my Aave positions as a little side project. I made my own scraper that uses the graph to pull in data and like visualize the data. And man, it turns out making even a block explorer that is just for looking at my own transactions is really hard. Like it shouldn't be this hard, I don't think, So.
Yes, that's why Web3 is taking a lot of time to come up.
Yeah.
But we'll get there. We're making it easier. So it sounds like you guys are developing a lot of partnerships. What interested you in Simbolik?
So the main thing is Simbolik's debugger, right? Now Simbolik's debugger integrated with VS Code. It enhances the user experience while debugging transactions and tracing and inspecting counter executions. So we want to integrate with this product, and the developers using Buildbear Labs can debug transactions faster, better, and reliable, I feel. Yeah. And so I think it actually marks a significant leap forward in Web3 development, because you really can't mix and match your execution environments and the debugger you choose. Sometimes you're locked into a vendor. We're trying to make people lock out, right? So that they can use whatever they want, and they can also use the debugger they want. So that's basically it.
All right, so let's see it in action. What do you have a specific example, like a really killer use case, or?
Okay.
Just want to highlight one thing over here is that, since the time when we first got on this journey, right, we always knew that our strength is the engine. And complete big shout out to Emmanuel, because of him being the amazing player at Rust. He hasn't mentioned in his introduction, but he was one of the guys who was working with the Rust organization and building the language. And thus his grip on Rust language, at least from whatever circles that I am into, is 100x better. And that's our strength. And the other thing is that we didn't want to reinvent the wheel was around it. Like, we didn't want to go ahead and say that, let's build an explorer, let's build the other parts, and for no reason try to make it difficult for the users. We wanted to always keep it open so that we integrate with the other players and provide the best to the developers. And with that, our idea was, we have the engine, we process them, that the developer teams need debugger, tracers, many more other things to be able to build a very thoroughly tested application. And that's where honestly, the Symbolic debugger was actually introduced to us by Consensus. They are thankfully one of our clients. So Amal from there, he mentioned to me about the Symbolic debugger and Rahul's Twitter profile. And it honestly started from there, where I did my homework and reached out to Rahul saying, can we just have a call? And then it was, I think, around like 8 to 9 months back, I think, if not wrong.
Yeah.
Emmanuel, it sounds like you were very humble during your intro. You worked on Rust. How early was it, and what was your experience like? Did you work for the Rust Foundation, or did you just contribute independently of that?
Yeah, so I did work with the Rust Lang organization, the Rust Lang itself. I was in the async working group for a few months. We were actually tasked with finding the issues with the async Rust. So, I mean, if you're into Rust, async Rust is not that perfect. I think it's pretty perfect now, but there are some issues and stuff. I'm not getting into the depths, but it's not as easy to code as let's say JavaScript async or whatever it is, right? But hey, I mean, we're fixing that stuff. It's getting better day by day. But yeah.
And while we're on the subject, is there any plans to build this testing environment out for Rust blockchains as well, or are we just concentrating on Solidity?
That's a very nice question. So the thing is, the way we have built the engine is it's very much plug and play, right? So the executor itself, you can swap out for any other executor, and you can swap out the database too. So you can literally use the same engine for other blockchains. At the end of the day, blockchains are very similar concepts they share similar concepts with each other, right? We currently do not support any other chains other than EVM-based chains, but yeah, we do love to support them in the future.
We actually evaluated at one point of time Arbitrum's virtual,
EVM+.
Yeah, EVM plus virtual machine, because they introduced Rust-based smart contracts. We actually, I don't know if I can call it market research, but we actually spoke to a couple of teams, developers, to understand basically the take on that. And we didn't find many takers. So we kind of pulled back on this one. Otherwise, that was one of the things that if there is a lot of people jumping onto it, because there is honestly technical advantages of doing that. But unfortunately, still not get there.
Yeah. And Everett, I think we're building a tool for the Arbitrum EVM environment, Arbitrum WASM environment as well, right?
Yeah, that actually just reminded me to check. It's going through DAO vote now, and it looks like it just passed as of yesterday.
Yes,
so,
that's correct. Yeah, that happened yesterday. Yes.
Yeah, so we're going to be building out some tooling that will enable us to offer kind of the same experience with, it'll be the base that we need to be able to build a symbolic experience on top of Arbitrum as well, on top of their stylus, like their EVM plus WebAssembly combined.
Yeah.
We have some other goals for it, like offering fuzzing tools, but it builds the same foundation or base on our technology that we can use to kind of expand into that ecosystem too, which I'm excited about. So, and it is kind of a unique ecosystem because it is, you have to manage the cross language calls and being able to shuffle data back.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So it does make even more, this challenge we were talking about earlier of making developer tooling for a nascent ecosystem is compounded by two, by the fact that it's two nascent ecosystems that you're now gluing together, and you have to have all the communication between the two working. But so yeah, thanks for the reminder. It looks like we got that. It passed the Dow vote. So
Pass the Dow vote.
Dipesh just reminded me when they first approached us like last year for the integration with Simbolik. And that was really interesting because at this time, we started Simbolik as an offline debugger first. So it was first developed just to support developers while they're still developing their contracts, while they're still writing the code. But then we jumped on a call with Dipesh, and he showed us like the sandboxes that they have on the Buildbear platform, and then suggested the idea that you could use Simbolik not just as a local debugger, but as a transaction debugger as well. And then, well, usually that would evolve a lot of work because there's so many moving parts, and we would probably need to build a user interface to select transactions that you want to debug. But then Buildbear already has this platform, and they already allow you to create a sandbox, fork it from mainnet, and have a block explorer on top. They give you a Sourcify server that we need from a debugger perspective to fetch the source code. So all these pieces were suddenly like in front of us, and we just needed to connect the dots. That's something really nice, and I think that's a good example of where it shows that Buildbear and the modular architecture that they have with plugins for different dev tools is more than just the sum of the pieces, because well, we can really plug into any tool, and suddenly it gets the benefits from all the other tools as well. So this is something that I really liked about the Buildbear approach, and that's yeah, I think that's when I was hooked. Basically, the first day that Dipesh approached us.
Thank you.
I want to comment on how I was hooked into this, because Raul came to me, saying it. Well, I mean, Raul's whole story is always coming to me with something new, and me being like, "What is this new thing you're coming to me with?" And then I'm like, "Okay, well, if you feel good about it, then let's go for it." Like that's how Simbolik started too, actually years ago, because he came to me and he's like, "I hacked together this debugger," and I was like, What are you talking about? So I was like, well, I guess you better run with it. But then he comes with the Buildbear thing, and I think one thing I've really appreciated about working with the Buildbear team in general is very oriented on putting in work. Like the partnership we signed initially was not one that was commercial in any nature. It was just purely about like, we're both going to agree to put work in to build out this really cool tooling. And every step along the way, it's always been about how can we make developer experience better? How can we reach more users? How can we make it so that, people are able to actually deploy and test and, debug their contracts easily in the Web3 setting that didn't exist before. So I think that's very, it makes it really easy to partner with Buildbear because very like-minded mindset in that regard. So.
Yeah, it sounds like a foundation for a successful marriage.
Yeah.
Dipesh, what are you going to show us?
Emmanuel's going to do the demo, yes.
Okay, so currently what we're trying to do is that we have an external owned account. We send a user operation to a smart account, and then basically it bundles the transaction via Pimlico and sends it to Buildbear, interacts with the Uniswap through fork, and that's basically it, right? I mean, not getting into that, it's not that complicated, but hey, we'll get stuff done, right? So I'll start off with the entire the demo is in this repo. So if you guys want to try it out, you can. So I'll just go forward. So what we do is we're just creating a sandbox, Polygon mainnet, and we go back to the code. We have to copy the chain ID and stuff, and then also the sandbox ID, right? Then we actually initialize a few variables, right? So one of them is basically firstly the variables. By the variables I mean the RPC URLs, right? Because you have to change all the RPC URLs, and so that just for the console log purposes, actually, to be very honest. So one of them is basically we create a private key, because if the user doesn't provide their own private key, we create one and then we use it. We create a public client, we create a Pimlico client, not getting into the depths of what this client does, but like, yeah. Then we create a signer, right? Then we attach that signer to the safe smart account, basically, so that we can submit that transactions or whatever it is. Then we create a client for the smart account, right? Yeah. And for debugging, basically, we record the balance, we record the DAI balance, the USDC balance before the transaction. We check if the user has enough balance before doing it. If they have, then it's fine, or else we'll just tell them to use the faucet. So now we're just running the script. They have not provided a private key, so it's going to generate a private key, and then it will tell us the account that needs funding. So we just go over to the faucet. We'll give the particular account tokens, which is the DAI tokens and the native tokens. We come back to, we also install the plugin. Then we come back to the code, basically, and these are the swap params. These are the swap params for the Uniswap swap, which is the token in is DAI, the token out is USDC, and that's basically it. And so what we do is that we actually send a user operation, which actually batches both the calls, which is one is approval for the DAI, second is the swap itself in Uniswap, right? Once we do that, basically the entire operation is done. We get the receipt, and voila, that's basically it. Then we get the balance. We check the balance after that, or whatever it is, right? So we're running the transaction. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I think that should be okay. So yeah, we swapped for one DAI, and we got back 0.999 USDC, which is fine, I think. And yeah, so let's open up the Explorer link for the particular transaction. So yeah, I think the first transaction is the one. So we just open it up. You can see all the logs basically, and you can see that the entire transfer and also the approval and all of the other logs. What you can do is that if you want to see the trace, you can actually install the Sentio plugin, and you can just generate a trace for the same transaction, and get all the trace parameters, like how much funds are going to each contracts. So in this case, the 0x8f fund, the token, the green token is technically the DAI token, and you're getting back the USDC token, right? So yeah, and they can go through the call trace if you want to debug more and all that stuff. The call graph, if you're into that, and if you want to debug more and stuff, yeah. So, and this is all possible via plugins and the other infrastructure.
So how would you do this without Buildbear? Like, what would be the challenges that this is solving?
The critical thing that we want to highlight is the Pimlico as a bundler, and this was actually also the one that is used by Brewit, which was the Vitalics, or where Vitalik was there. The issue is that essentially, if you're building an application with Pimlico or any account abstraction related infrastructure, you unfortunately cannot actually test it locally. There is nothing that works locally. You're basically doing complete mocks and honestly praying to God that this is exactly how it will work on the mainnet. Because there is, and I'll tell you what is the difference. Bundlers are an off-chain service. Paymasters are an off-chain service. But when you're doing locally, you don't have anything. So you're actually writing your smart contracts saying that if I do this transaction, expect this software to do exactly this what I'm telling you to do, and that's how it will work. And thus, you're basically trying to just guess that this what exactly the bundler software will do when this goes live on the mainnet. Thus, actually, the problem for all of them were that we develop locally, we are not confident, we go on a testnet. Unfortunately, on testnet, we have other issues. Faucet to begin with, but then everything else around that is also a problem. Sometimes, interestingly, they have these account abstraction teams, because we've spoken to a couple of them. They've actually confirmed that the transaction has not actually performed the same manner on the testnet versus on the mainnet. So there is a difference of code. The interesting part is also bundlers are not open source, except Pimlico's. So that's the only bundler which is open source. Thus, there have been a lot of these issues. And in our case, if Buildbear were not to have the Pimlico bundler or the plugin, then you're just basically saying, okay, I'm going to use some mocks and then actually either test it on mainnet or just deploy and hopefully everything works exactly same when I go on the mainnet. So there's a lot of prayers involved, which we've taken away.
I can see why Rhye has gotten interested in building with you guys, because that's so much in common with his vision. And well, you've given talks. I've seen you give talks on like probably 3 different continents at this point on Symbolic. And I think last year alone, you were in like 6 different countries that some of them I missed. What's your favorite example to show using Symbolic?
So it depends a lot on the audience that you have in front of you. Like if you are, it makes a difference if you're talking to a Solidity beginner or someone who's been in the space for since 2017. For beginners, I just use like very simple examples. We actually have an example repository containing Solidity code of different complexity. So for a beginner, I would just show them, hey, this is an ERC20 token, and this is how you can step through a transfer transaction. For a more advanced user, I would show them how a DEX operation, how a swap on a DEX works. And then for the people that are really deep into DeFi, well, it makes no sense just showing them more and more complex DeFi protocols. Like I could show them maybe Uniswap v3, but then I want to show them like the more advanced features of the debugger. So I show them how the Solidity compiler actually allocates memory variables under the hood. Like how does the EVM work? Because I think one of the unique things about Symbolic is that it's the only Solidity and EVM debugger. So you can inspect the code at 2 different levels, either high level Solidity or low level EVM level. I think that one of the benefits with Symbolic, specifically with the integration, with the Buildbear integration, is like consider the classical steps that you would need to take if you just wanted to debug some transaction. Like you have some code, that's where you're starting from, and now you want to debug a transaction. Like step through the code one line at a time. So what you would need to do is, well, you first need to compile the contracts. Straight, fair enough. Then you have to deploy your own local testnet, maybe an Anvil node, maybe an Hardhat node. So you spin up your testnet. Then you need to deploy your smart contract, and you maybe your smart contract depends on other contracts, so you must deploy them first. And this is a recursive step. So you end up deploying 10 contracts. And then you start interacting with the contract by submitting transactions. Maybe you even have a user interface that you want to spin up. So, but this, like, until you actually get to the point where you can start stepping through the code, you've already spent like 2 or 3 hours setting up your environment. And I think this is something that is
like, honestly.
Yeah, it could take days.
Yeah, if you have done it several times, then you may be faster. If you're doing this for the first time or for a new protocol that you've never seen before, then it can take you some days even. And then the nice thing with the Buildbear and Symbolic integration is, well, Buildbear offers you this end-to-end testing environment where you can simply interact with your contracts with your user interface. You can connect it to the Buildbear sandbox. You can submit some transactions, and then you can directly start debugging them without any additional steps taken. And now this, I'm really hyped about this, because this also means that if I tested something, then I can easily share my test or my debugging session with anybody from the team or with anybody on another team. So, and this is something that is really, really strong. So consider you are testing your dApp, and a user or a beta tester is reporting a bug. Then, well, some engineer needs to pick up this issue and needs to find out, hey, what's going on? And when you have done this, well, sometimes this is really hard. Like you spend days just reproducing the issue. And now this setup phase just for reproducing is now completely eliminated, because Buildbear really offers you like deterministic and reproducible environments. So, and this is so strong. So instead, now you have a user or a beta tester that is testing an application. He runs into a bug, and he just gives the team a transaction ID or a transaction hash, and now the developer responsible for solving the issue can just go to the Buildbear sandbox. He can use all the tools that are integrated into the Buildbear platform. He can use Symbolic. He can use Saucify. He can use the Block Explorer. Everything that's there. So he doesn't need to set up anything additionally. He has a reproducible example. And I think that's something that is really, really strong.
Yeah, I think if you also take that whole story and you replace beta tester with audit contestant, it makes a very strong way to do reproducible bugs in these audit contests, and triaging and understanding and dissecting the bugs submitted for audit contests it's a huge amount of labor, and it's hard. It's hard work. It's not an easy. It's hard to read other people's code. It's especially hard to read other people's bug reports and try to understand what's going on with them. So it's very powerful for that.
Interestingly, that is what actually is the specific of how me and Emmanuel started this thing when we were working with this DeFi application, TimeSwap. And it was the truth is this, that we had an entire DeFi stack built on top of Uniswap and Rhye. And for us to test it, we had to deploy because we were unfortunately beyond the stage of local host. So we were team doing things, different teams were more or less debating and fighting with each other. And we spent hours on Zoom calls. This is not work. This is wrong in your code, and you should fix this. We're a remote team, right? So essentially, one person's actually like a robot saying, "Okay, this is what he's telling me. Let me type it out." And then Emmanuel was actually the most hit because we were like, "Okay, let's now deploy it on Polygon testnet." It took us, I think, with all the scripts and everything, because we had to deploy mock Uniswap, Rhye, the scripts for state sync and everything. It would take us like 3 hours to get this done, front end running, and we would find one transaction. The first transaction was with a bug, and we're like, that's like 2 minutes fix or 5 minutes fix, and I have to redo everything that I just did for another 3-4 hours for 15 minutes of work. And we decided, that's it. We cannot do this one lifetime, man. Yeah. We are done. We're going to fix this thing.
See, the problem is with blockchain, I mean, if testnet works good, I mean, it's okay. But like a lot of transaction fails. Sometimes the transaction reverts. If you don't have a good script, I mean, nowadays, like you have declarative way of deployment, which is better. It can, resume and stuff like that. Or else you have to write all of that code yourself, right? So basically, like I'm sitting there writing code so that it can scan that, hey, okay, these are deployed. Basically, I recreated the Foundry stack. I mean, the Foundry deployment stack gets here, right? Because I had to track which all are deployed, what the deployment status, and redeploy it, verify it. Stuff like that. It's horrible, right? when you do it at scale with a lot of contracts and stuff. So
yeah, and I think like even if you manage to deploy the entire system, like with all the dependencies, with maybe you have an Aave integration, maybe you have a compound integration, and even if you succeed in deploying these systems, like you can never be confident that you did all the steps correctly, that all the contracts, all the protocols have been deployed with the correct parameters. So you may actually, even if you succeed, you may actually be testing against an environment that has nothing to do with the real world.
Yep, 100%. And the thing is that even if you deploy the mock contracts on the testnet, or if you deploy your contracts in the mainnet and try to do a $1 transaction, I think both are in the same boat, to be honest, because at the end of the day, you are not simulating a real world transaction that can range in $1 million transactions or whatever it is, right? You're just transferring like $1 here and there. You're seeing, okay, this is working. Okay, it's perfect. I mean, I think that both are in the same boat, to be honest. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a developer, but I participated in some hackathons in Solidity in the past, and like I understand these pains. So anybody who's working on production-ready Solidity code should get really excited by this. What kind of traction do you have? Like, how many sandboxes are there? How many developers are actively using the testing environment?
Oh, in terms of sandbox, I have to get the latest number, but I think we have more than 50 or 60,000 sandboxes.
So, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we stopped counting transaction long back because they're at the test transaction, right? So we do see a lot of people, just doing a lot of dumb transaction as well. We were actually counting at one point of time, but then it was high enough number. We said, okay, we're going to only count sandboxes. In terms of users, I think on an average monthly, we have around 500 active users.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. People forget the Web3 developer market of people who are seriously developing is not that big. 500 users is really amazing market penetration.
Yeah, that's active, and we've been actually very strict on our Michael is the one who's a bit strict on this thing, because the user count is heavy, sign up count is heavy, but then we just track only the active because that's the true test of the product, right? So yeah,
it's a healthy way to do it. All right, we're almost running out of time. Are you guys going to eat Denver?
Okay. Emmanuel might be. That depends because we're still waiting for the approval. Or did we get the approval? I don't know. That talk that we kind of proposed.
I haven't heard anything yet.
Wait, why don't you just DM Vitalik and let him know that you'll be in town again? And you just.
Okay. Yeah. I am a bit of exhausted with travel, and honestly, Denver is too cold a place for me to go. I've been there twice, and literally bleeding from my nose because of that cold.
Yeah, it's right here.
That's serious. When people, I grew up near Denver, and now I'm living on the other side of the mountains. But when people arrive, I tell them drink way more water than you expect, right? And also go easy with the elevation. Like you going for a hike, go slow because you'd be surprised how much the water and the elevation affects people. But
last question. Last week, Lissandra actually put me on some fado music. So I've been listening to, and I'm going to probably butcher this, but it's Hasa de Sela, Los Peces. I don't know. I've been just, every time I'm cooking, I'm putting on this fado music. I feel real fancy. What are you guys rocking out to on Spotify?
Spotify, okay.
Not Spotify. If you use a different service, I'm impartial. I'm gonna add it to my Spotify, but
I only actually listen to Hindi music. I don't listen to English music. I'm very Hindi by nature, so I listen to sometimes classical or Sufi music, Bollywood songs. That's what
drop us a specific song so I can check it out.
Depends what kind of genre do you like? Pop one, or do you want the soulful music one?
No. This is your choice. This is nothing to do with me. But if you're getting up this call in the mood to listen to something, okay. What are you putting on?
Okay, there's a song known as Tu Jhoom. It's by Coke Studio, and it's a very meaningful song. It just kind of puts you in a very different realm. It's TU2 and then Jhoom, JHOOM.
I'm excited. I'll check it out. What about the rest of you fellas?
I've been listening to a mix of sad boy folk country and Gen Z nihilistic house pop. I don't know, it's somehow that. So the song
so you and Depeche basically listening to the same stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like the country.
I would say the song I'll leave you with is called "Bored" by INJI. It's called "Bored," and it's I feel like, well, I don't know Gen Z very well, but I feel like it's my idea of Gen Z. So
yeah, I'll go next. So I've been listening to some random stuff, but after the Super Bowl halftime show, which was pretty wild on Reddit, the music that's ringing behind my head is Luther, from the GNX album by Kendrick Lamar.
Raul, you still on the Guns N' Roses kick, or?
Yeah, I really need to escape Spotify's algorithm somehow, because it's for several months now, it's only suggesting me the same music that I've been listening to all my life. So
Yeah.
I need something new. I don't know how to escape Spotify's random algorithm anymore.
Well,
So it's not really random.
I'll tell you how. You go back to watch these videos and put in all the songs people have recommended. You're gonna get all
that's what
sorts
I
of
do
weird
now,
suggestions.
That's how I get new input now.
All right, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you guys, and we definitely should do this again because I had a lot of more questions prepared that we didn't get to because let's not make this too long. So let's check in a couple of months, see how the progress is going, and we'll see Buildbear and Simbolik in action again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Have a good weekend. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Views expressed are solely our opinions, not financial advice. Participants may have investments in the projects discussed.